you've probably been to the doctor, and probably more than once. You've done the tests, you've taken the antibiotics, and maybe they helped for a bit, and then the pain came back. And now you're here sitting wondering if this is just your life now. And I'm here to tell you it doesn't have to be. Because 6 years ago, I was exactly where you are. And I got through it. Not through surgery, not through medication, but through something that nobody told me about. And it started with understanding one connection between my body and my breathing, and that changed everything. There's a reason why your pain hasn't gone away. And it's nothing to do with your prostate, nothing to do with an infection. And once I understood what was actually driving it, things started shifting within weeks. But here's the thing. Most men who go through this never find out what we're going to explore today. They keep chasing symptom after symptom. They keep going back for more tests, more antibiotics, more procedures. And every time the pain comes back, anxiety gets a little worse. Then the anxiety makes the pain worse. The loop. And nobody tells us how to break it. But by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what kept my pain alive for 3 long years and specific shifts that started reversing it. It's not theory, it's just my story. And if it sounds familiar, it might just be yours too. I'm not a doctor. What I am is someone who spent 3 years in that loop. Tests, rabbit holes, fear, antibiotics. And I found a way out. And I built this channel to make sure other men find it faster than I did. And let's get into it. And pay attention to the part where I talk about what fear was actually doing to my body, because that's the piece that took me a long time to understand. And it's probably the most important part of this video. And to start it off, I recommend every single one of you that is struggling with pelvic pain to go and see your family healthcare doctor and go and see a urologist and get everything checked and all the tests you need to rule out anything more serious. So let me take you back to where this all started. It started with what felt like a UTI. I started having frequent urination, some little discomfort in my pelvic area, but nothing dramatic at first. Just something wasn't right. So I did what anyone would do. I went to my GP. They ran a UTI test, came back negative. Then they ran a prostate cancer test, negative again. So they sent me to a urologist. And the urologist, like most, with this kind of presentation of symptoms, gave me antibiotics. And honestly, they helped for a bit. The symptoms quiet down. And I thought, okay, I got it, it's fine. But then a few weeks later, everything came back. So back to the urologist. And he gave me another round of antibiotics. Same thing, brief relief, back again. At one point he mentioned Chinese medicine. And I'll never forget this, he said the only real way to know what was going on inside my prostate was to stick a needle in there. And I said, no, that wasn't a place or thing I was willing to explore at this point. Things were bad, but not that bad right now. And that moment, I realized nobody actually really knows what's going on. Nobody had an answer. And I felt on my own. And that loneliness was really scary. So I did what a lot of people do, probably even yourself, when the medical system runs out of answers. I went online. The rabbit holes, one after another. Stretching routines, video after video, supplements, forum threads at 2 a.m. Each one felt like a little bit of hope, but each one fizzled out. But the real problem wasn't that I hadn't found the right stretch yet the right supplement. The real problem was something I hadn't even considered yet. And it got a little bit dark. Not because my pain was getting worse at this time, but because what I started doing in response to my pain. You know, here's what nobody talks about with chronic pelvic pain. It's not just the pain. It's what the pain does to your mind. I started becoming hyper aware of every sensation in my body. Every twinge, every shift, every time I went to the toilet, I'd feel something and I'd immediately start asking, uh-oh, what now? Is this worse today? Is it different? What does this mean? I was scanning my own body constantly, looking for data to help, looking for signals. But what I didn't realize was at that time, that scanning for pain, looking for it, bracing for it, was feeding it. And then the pelvic pain and the urinary symptoms dug into my daily life in very specific ways. You know, every time I left the house, I'd plan around the toilet. Before I got on a train, before I got on a bus, before I got in a car, I needed to know where the nearest bathroom was. And should I go now? Should I wait? And because I was anxious about needing to go, I'd clench more. I'd tense more. And because I was clenching, the pressure would build up. And because the pressure was building up, I'd need to go again. And the whole thing would spiral. Again, the loop. You know, it sounds a bit embarrassing to say it out loud, but if you've gone through this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That constant low level vigilance, that feeling in your own body has become something to be afraid of. And that was a really, really low point, maybe the lowest. Just that slow realization that everything had become scary. My own body had become scary. And I wasn't living my life anymore. I was just managing my pain and my symptoms to get through the day. And, you know, the thing is now I understand that everything I was trying to do and doing to try and be better was actually making my pain worse. I was clenching, the scanning, the anxiety, the chasing every symptom. All of it was part of the problem, and I didn't know it yet. You know, and I want to tell you what life looks like now. I wake up in the morning, I don't think about my pelvic floor, I don't think about pain. I have none. I get on a train, I don't check for where the toilet is. I can have sex with any post-pain. Now, that's what's possible. And it all started with understanding one thing. So here's what I eventually learned. This was the key to the door that opened the rest of my life. And this is the part I promised you at the start, the part that took me a long time to understand. The pain wasn't just a physical problem. It was a nervous system problem. When you experience pain, your body responds. Muscles tighten, your breathing gets shallower, it gets faster. You brace more, you tense more. That's normal because that's your body trying to protect you from a perceived threat. But when the pain starts to become chronic, your nervous system starts anticipating it, and then something strange happens. Anticipation creates tension, and the fear of the pain or the symptom creates the physical conditions that produce more pain. And then the more afraid you are, the tighter you clench, the tighter you brace, the more pain signals fire. The loop. A genuine physiological feedback loop. And I was stuck in that loop for 3 years without knowing. You know, your nervous system is stuck in a protective mode that's not serving you. You know, the body doesn't know Whatever the initial threat was that started your pelvic pain, it's still bracing. It's still anticipating it's there, that it's coming. And this is why antibiotics gave brief relief but didn't break the cycle. Okay, they might have addressed someone's bacteria, but they don't address the loop. And this is why more stretching, more scanning, more Googling made things worse. It was sending the same signal. Danger. Once I understood this, I stopped trying to fix the pain and I started trying to calm the system that was producing it. And it started with my breathing. And I want to be honest with you about something. Every month I spent in that loop, chasing symptoms, going to doctors, ordering and trying another supplement, was a month of the pattern getting more established, more ingrained. I was practicing fear. And the sooner you understand what's actually driving it, the sooner you can start to reverse it and start living. So after all the rabbit holes, all the forums, all the stretching that went nowhere, I came across something that reframed everything. I learned that the pelvic floor isn't isolated. It's a diaphragm. And that diaphragm is connected physically, functionally, and neurologically to every other diaphragm in our body. Our breathing diaphragm, the structures at the base of our skull, and when we breathe a certain way, which most of us do when we're anxious, when we're stressed, when we're in pain, it's not just affecting how our lungs move and work. You're affecting the whole connected system. Tension travels down, and the pelvic floor sitting at the base of that system, it holds it. And that was the start of the end. Not another pill, not another test, not a needle anywhere near my prostate. Just learning to breathe properly, fully, deeply, expansively, in a way that actually communicated safety to my system in a way that started to release the pelvic floor from the bottom up. Within weeks, I started noticing considerably less pain. And then everything else started to follow. How we breathe can keep you in fight or flight. When we have good, functional, healthy breathing, it tells our system we're safe. But it's also our relationship with our breathing as well. Breathing is one of the only direct paths we have to influence the autonomic nervous system through what is known as the vagus nerve. Now, we're going to go much deeper on specifics and techniques in future videos, but for now, I want you to understand this principle, because the principle is what everything else is built on. Once pain started reducing, the anxiety started reducing too. And once the anxiety reduced, the pain reduced further. I stopped tensing. I stopped getting penis pain. I stopped having to go to the toilet a million times a day. The same loop that had been making things worse, I started working it back in reverse. If anything of what I'm describing, the fear, the nervous system, the connection to breathing, if any of that is landing for you, I want you to subscribe and stick around, because every video I'm going to put out on this channel is going to go deeper into this. Techniques, mindset shifts, and things I wish someone had told me, 6 years earlier. So hit subscribe so you don't miss out. I want to be real with you about what recovery looked like, because I don't want to paint a picture that's too clean and perfect. Healing wasn't linear. There were days I felt better and thought, okay, this is it, I got it. And then a stressful week would hit and things would tighten up again. But I'd have to remind myself, this is not a setback. This is just what my system's doing, what it's supposed to do. It's responding to stress. My job is to start responding to it with calm and control and teaching it safety. But the goal and the journey and the direction was clear. You know, within a few weeks of working with my breath and understanding the loop I was in, pain was noticeably less. Going to the toilet was noticeably less. And that constant low-level scanning started to reduce. And slowly, I started living again instead of just managing my day just to get through it. Train journeys got easier. Toilet planning stopped. I stopped dreading even sitting down. I stopped calculating where exits were if I needed to go to the toilet. You know, recovery isn't about the absence of all sensation. It's about our relationship with the sensation and that sensation changing. You know, sensations lose their power when we stop triggering and they stop triggering fear. You know, I'm not telling you this will be overnight, but I'm telling you the direction is clear once you understand what you're working with. And I want this channel to be a resource that I didn't have. The place where you can come and understand what's happening from a different angle, from a new perspective, maybe something you hadn't considered before, and then what to do about it. You know, I'd like you to drop a comment below. You know, where are you in your pelvic pain journey? Have you started to find a way through? Are you experiencing that time of loss, that feeling of loss that I spoke about? You know, I'll read every single one. And if this video sounds anything like your story, I'd love to know. So that's my story. 3 years of pain, dead ends, a lot of fear, and then the understanding that started to change everything. You know, if you're sitting there right now and this sounds familiar, the loop I spoke about, that scanning, the way anxiety feeds the pain, the way the pain feeds the anxiety, you're in the right place. This channel exists for you. So subscribe and let's figure this out together.